it was just regular. It was regular. And for them to be able to follow Malcolm-Jamal all the way to the airport, like it's like they got him going into the actual like in any like
Nobody's
commercial.
paying attention. Nobody's paying attention to how intrusive that is, to how careful that is. He wasn't on his way to film a movie. He wasn't on his way to go do anything. He was going on a regular flight. This wasn't a nothing. This is nothing that paparazzi should have been involved in. But then again, neither was Javon Hadley's case. Javon Hadley's case was not a case that should have been being followed by paparazzi at all. But as we're starting to learn and as we're starting to see, there's a lot more of that involved than we might want to believe. So
NBC News has just confirmed that actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner has died at the age of 54. Authorities in Costa Rica telling NBC News that Warner accidentally drowned while swimming in the ocean on Sunday.
Millions of us grew up with Theo Huxtable. But on July 20th, Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the actor who played that role, drowned in Costa Rica while his daughter watched from the shore. The friend he entered the water with made it out and then just vanished. Now the timeline is shifting, his family has questions, and the deeper you look, the more it stops feeling like an accident. It was Saturday, July 20th, 2025. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was on vacation in Costa Rica with his daughter. And for a second, that sentence sounds kind of beautiful, until it turned into the absolute worst day imaginable. They were at Playa Cocles, which locals call Playa Grande. It sounds fancy, but it's known for being unpredictable. I mean, it's beautiful, but deadly, and not in a poetic way. Around noon, Warner reportedly entered the water to swim. Early reports said he was swimming with his daughter and that they both got caught in a current. But that version got corrected a few days later, and Costa Rican authorities clarified that Warner's daughter had actually stayed on the shore while he and a friend entered the water. That friend made it back while Warner didn't. Now don't forget this point, because it will be one of the most important parts of this story really soon. The initial report said that by 12:15 p.m., he was spotted struggling in the water and that surfers managed to reach his daughter first and kept her safe with a surfboard. Then, volunteers pulled Warner back to the beach and started CPR immediately. For over 20 minutes, they tried to save him, but it was already too late. He was pronounced dead right there, and the cause of death is accidental asphyxia due to submersion, which is basically them saying he drowned. But did he really drown though? Because for someone like Warner, I mean, the guy grew up as Theo Huxtable, survived Hollywood, and built a life full of music, love, and integrity. None of this feels right, and that's where things start to unravel. So let's rewind and break this down. Because the deeper you go into the details, the more you realize how sketchy this all looks.
Yes, one too many.
First, the beach. Playa Cocles has a really bad rep, plus there is no consistent lifeguard patrol, and the rip currents are strong enough to sweep adults away in seconds. And there are a bunch of handwritten warning signs that basically scream, "Enter at your own risk." Local surfers and rescue volunteers have been calling out the Costa Rican government for months, even before Warner's death, saying the beach is a death trap. Now here's where things get weird. The original story that Warner and his daughter were both caught in a current made it sound like a heroic dad trying to save his kid. But police later clarified that wasn't the case. His daughter never entered the water. She had been playing at the shore when Warner and a friend went in. Again, remember, they both got pulled by a current, but the friend somehow swam and saved himself. Yeah, that doesn't sound suspicious at all. Because unless his friend is some Olympic-level swimmer, they've got some explaining to do. And that friend, nobody really knows who they are. They haven't spoken publicly, and the police haven't released a name. All we know is they were with Warner when it happened and made it out without injury. So how do you go in with someone, they drown, and you're just gone? You didn't give any statement or a tribute or even acknowledgement? That sure doesn't sit right with me. There's also the issue of timing. Witnesses said the water wasn't overly rough that morning, which is odd for a beach known for deadly currents. Plus, the rescue was kind of a mess. No professional lifeguards responded. It was local surfers and volunteers who pulled Warner out and gave CPR. The fact that CPR even went on for over 20 minutes shows how desperately they tried. but also how slow the actual emergency response was. So now you've got a timeline that keeps changing, a beach that's known to be dangerous, and a guy who is careful, smart, and not known for taking dumb risks. Add all that up, and suddenly the word accident feels a bit wrong. And honestly, that's exactly how his family feels. Because when they spoke out, they weren't just sad, they were confused. And when people who knew him best start saying things don't line up, that's when you have to stop and listen. Malcolm-Jamal Warner wasn't just another celebrity. He was Theo, the guy who stayed out of scandals and gave us music, poetry, incredible acting, and that calm uncle energy before it was even a thing. So when the news broke, people like Keisha Knight Pulliam, Anthony Mackie, and Regina King didn't just post the usual RIPs. They sounded shaken. Keisha called him her big brother and said she'd lost a part of her soul. Anthony Mackie called him a beautiful human being and added, Malcolm wasn't reckless. He was grounded and always had your back. Keyword, he wasn't reckless. His family, though, mostly stayed private, but they made it clear to reporters that the timeline didn't sit right, and that Warner wasn't the kind of guy to walk into danger, especially not with his daughter on the shore. It's subtle, but you can hear it in their tone. They're not saying he was murdered or anything wild like that, but they are saying there's more to the story. And honestly, they might be right. But here's something that nobody's really talking about. Why is Hollywood weirdly quiet? A man who is literally the face of black excellence in mainstream TV for decades dies in a sudden, tragic way, and most of the industry just mumbled RIP and kept it moving? That's not normal. What do you mean there wasn't a big tribute at the BET Awards, or at least a candlelight vigil in LA? All we got was just a couple Instagram stories in silence. Which, if you ask me, feeds into that weird Hollywood narrative, the one where people know more than they're allowed to say. Because when someone like Malcolm goes and people act like it's just another Tuesday, it makes you wonder what's being brushed under the rug. It's giving controlled PR. Also, we gotta talk about Costa Rica's beach safety, or honestly, the lack of it. The beach is beautiful, sure, but it's also notorious for rip currents, and there are barely any lifeguards. There can be like 1 or 2 during peak hours, and sometimes none. The Caribbean Guard, a volunteer group, has been begging the government for months to post more warnings, fund actual lifeguard training, and create emergency plans. Especially since this isn't the first drowning at that beach, it's not even the 5th. And now it took a beloved celebrity dying for anyone to pay attention. The frustrating part is it was preventable. Warner shouldn't have been left to the mercy of surfers with CPR training. There should have been a proper lifeguard on duty, or a working emergency response team, and even clearer warnings. And this isn't about blaming Costa Rica or canceling anyone's vacation, it's about making sure this doesn't happen again. Because if someone like Warner can get swept up, imagine how many others are at risk.
There is part of me that I will be able to leave this earth knowing and people knowing that I was a good person.
In one of his last interviews before his death, Warner talked about his legacy. He said, I want people to remember that I tried to be a good person and that I treated people with love and respect. That's the kind of man we lost. A man who made it out of child stardom without losing his soul. His family deserves real answers, not out of conspiracy, but out of respect. Because saying it was just an accident doesn't feel like enough. R.I.P. Malcolm. You were more than Theo. You were everything they said and more. If this story hit you or made you emotional, good. Now share it. Because silence is how stories like this get buried. And Malcolm-Jamal Warner deserves better than silence. And yeah, like and subscribe if you want more amazing stories like this.